Well, look, I realize Republicans are in the middle of our own little dust up here and controversy, and there is a split, and there's good and bad, and I got all that. That's the way it goes. But man alive, it's not going well for Democrats. They're nationally unpopular, and some of them might be going to jail. Maybe. I don't know. Joining me now, John Phillips, host of the amazing John Phillips Show, my go to on so much of this stuff. Okay, John, is Adam Schiff going to jail?
If you put people in jail for lying on bank forms, I think there's no question about it. That's exactly what he did. As a member of Congress in the state of California, you're required to maintain your residency here. Now, before he was elected to the US Senate, and that was a close election, at least in the primary, where he and Steve Garvey were running neck and pencil neck. And he, of course, ended up winning that seat and moving from the House to the Senate. But he basically had moved his family from California to Maryland a long time ago. If you're a congressman from one of those East Coast states, it's easy. As we know, Joe Biden would ride the Amtrak. Some of them, if you represent Maryland or nearby states, you can just drive to the capital. But if you represent California, that's a long flight. That's a 6 hour flight. So a lot of them just move their wife, they move their kids to DC, and they basically live there. And it's kind of a wink, wink, nod, nod. Okay, you maintain a residence in California. And that's what he did. But he bought this large, opulent house in Maryland. And what he needed to do to secure the good loan was to tell the bank that that was his domicile, that was his primary residence. And that's what he put down on all of those bank documents. Now, if that was your primary residence, then you're a resident of Maryland. You're not a resident of California, and you would not qualify for the ballot to be a member of Congress representing the state of California. But he basically told the bank that that was his residence and no one else. Everyone else was told that he lives in this tiny little one bedroom, I think it is, condo in Burbank. He's got what, a large family, couple wife, couple of kids. And we're supposed to believe that they're living in a tiny little condo in Burbank when they have this big house in Maryland that's just, a secondary home. No one's buying it.
Okay, it certainly sounds sleazy, not surprising at all because it's Adam Schiff. I mean, that's really kind of what he does, but it also doesn't sound like that's the kind of thing that's going to have him in an orange jumpsuit, and I don't like to oversell people and underdeliver. This doesn't sound like it's going to go all the way, but am I wrong?
It just depends on the jurisdiction. So there are members of the California legislature in the same county as Adam Schiff, Los Angeles County, that ended up going to jail for doing just that. So if you're a member of the House in California, you can live anywhere you want in the state. You don't have to live in your district. It's politically beneficial to live in your district, but you don't have to live there. If you are a member of the state legislature or a member of the city council in Los Angeles, let's say, the state of California requires you to live in the district. If you don't live in the district, you are subject to prosecution. There is a state senator by the name of Rod Wright who represented a district in Los Angeles County that he did not live in. He had a property there, but he didn't live there, and they could prove it. And he was criminally convicted and did some time. There is a member of the LA City Council who did the same thing. He represented a district he did not live in. They could prove that. He was criminally convicted and is barred from running for office again here in California. So we have prosecuted that before in the county that Adam Schiff lives in. Now we have a different district attorney now, and I don't think this guy's going to be as aggressive as Steve Cooley was, but it is something that they typically do enforce in LA County.
How about that? Well, that would be something to see. All right, we're going to stay in California because Gavin Newsom he's so transparent, he might as well be a window. He's going on right-wing podcasts to try to make himself not look like the spawn of Satan that he is. Here he was on Sean Ryan's show, all about them guns.
Brother, this is fabulous. You know what? Last thing people would expect is that I respect this gift.
Really?
I appreciate, yeah, man. I'm not anti-gun at all. I'm for just some gun safe common sense that I think vast majority of folks on the right and the left agree. And I think we've lost a little touch with some common sense around background checks.
He's just about common sense, John.
Oh, yeah. When he was lieutenant governor and he was trying to make noise for his run for governor of California, he did so by advocating for gun control. I mean, that was his entire cause when he was lieutenant governor, and he tried to attach himself to that issue so that he could, increase his name ID and get his name in the newspapers and all of those things. But now that he has to run in South Carolina, man, he's just John Wayne. He doesn't even flip the switch to turn the light off at home. He just shoots it out.
He also still does have a bit of a COVID problem. Joe Rogan apparently sent in a question, and well, here it was.
This is from Joe Rogan.
Oh, God.
This is a tough one.
He won't have me on the show, by the way.
Who will be held accountable for mandating COVID-19 vaccines for children, which were unnecessary and ineffective? And who will take responsibility for the unprecedented increases in myocarditis and cancer cases among them? Second to that, do you feel any remorse for that draconian decision that was obviously heavily influenced by the pharmaceutical companies' desire for maximum profit?
Yeah, I've signed some of the most progressive laws against big pharma in the country, so I have receipts on that. So no one should suggest that it was about doing the bidding of big pharma. Quite the contrary. And I know everyone's a goddamn genius now in hindsight, but at the time, none of us knew what we were up against, including the President of the United States, who I worked very closely with. There wasn't a Democratic governor in America that worked closer during the pandemic than I did with Donald Trump.
John, I don't need any help to hate Gavin Newsom, but I'll tell you, brother, he's pretty slippery. Is this act going to work?
You notice, by the way, that the swearing is part of the new act, too, where he comes across as more authentic. It just curses nonstop. So now it's Governor Andrew Dice Newsom. It's not just the vaccine requirements that he was responsible for. And believe me, we had them. I could not go to dinner without showing proof of vaccination. They would not let me in the building. He turned the hosts and hostesses of restaurants into his vaccine police. And that happened all over the state. They punished people who chose not to take the vaccine. But just take the vaccines off the table for a second. He would do things like arrest people for windsurfing in the ocean by themselves. He shut down the golf courses. He shut down the tennis courts. He shut down the parks. He shut down all of these things that had nothing to do with the spread of COVID. And if you complained about it, you were anti-science. And we've later learned that people like Adam Schiff would work with Silicon Valley to try to deplatform you so your voice wouldn't be out in the public domain. As I learned, by the way, from a lawsuit that was brought up against the Department of Public Health, the LA County Department of Public Health, through documents that were uncovered in that lawsuit, I found out that Adam Schiff and the LA County Department of Public Health were trying to get me kicked off of Twitter. So I say this not as someone who read about it in the paper, but someone who they actively tried to silence over all of this. And then you have the schools, where the schools were shut down for over a year. And as part of the agreement for them to go back in some of these districts, including the largest districts in the state, they had to agree to all kinds of pay increases. They had to agree to defund the school police. This long laundry list of left-wing Christmas wishes were granted to finally get the teachers to come back to work. That's Gavin Newsom's California. And that's the story that he doesn't want the rest of the nation to know. But that is the story of what life was like in California during COVID. And he can go on these podcasts and he can try to rewrite history all he wants. All they have to do to disprove his claims is to talk to someone who lives here, and we'll tell you what life was like under Warden Newsom.
Does the voter know that, though, John? I know, obviously, your listeners are going to know that. People who watch this are going to know that. But voters are, en masse, fickle beasts. They forget quickly. There's new problems, new this, new that, new scandal, new this. Have people let it go?
Here's the thing with Gavin Newsom. When the focus is on Gavin Newsom and his performance in California, his numbers drop like a stone. His numbers are not strong in California. What he does when his numbers start to go down is he picks a fight with the federal government. He picks a fight with Donald Trump, and he tries to federalize everything because we are a deep blue state. So if the focus is on COVID or the bullet train or the state budget or the insurance crisis or a failure to mitigate for fire risk or whatever the case may be, his numbers go down. But if he picks a fight with Donald Trump and looks like the leader of the resistance, or if he picks a fight over abortion, or he goes at it with Ron DeSantis or Greg Abbott, his numbers go up because politics is so tribal right now. If he looks just like the Democratic standard bearer, if he looks like the angriest Democrat in the room who's pushing back the hardest on Donald Trump, then in a partisan context, he becomes more popular. And that's what he does to save himself in California. He runs away from his own record in California. If that Democratic primary is about how California was run while he was governor, he's going to lose. If that Democratic primary becomes who hates Donald Trump the most, he could be the actor that reads that script probably better than many of them.
He is a wily one. John, thank you, brother. As always, I appreciate you.
I would thank you for coming to my YouTube channel, but I know how brilliant it is, and I know you love it here. So subscribe and watch. We're going to start really ramping things up and putting some funny stuff, some interesting stuff out there, some collaborations. Either way, my YouTube channel is officially the place to be. So stick around.